It was whiteout conditions. You could only see 5 feet in front of you, extreme cold, high winds, and the altitude made every step a challenge. We had been lost for almost 2 hours and could not find our way back down the mountain. My vision was fuzzy and I was exhausted after 10 hours of extreme physical activity. I started to fall behind until the guide and the rest of our group had disappeared. I was already exhausted, but now I was also afraid. The clock was ticking. I had to find a way back down before I collapsed and froze to death. Obviously I survived and I still have enough fingers left to type this script, but what was supposed to be a straightforward climb nearly turned into disaster. In this video, I'm going to share the full story and the 5 game-changing life lessons learned. Although I learned these lessons while climbing a mountain, they apply to anything you are trying to accomplish, whether it's a project at work, trying to start a business, or asking out the person you have a crush on. Lesson 1 is the quickest way to learn something is to get started. For years I had wanted to learn more about mountaineering. I'd done many challenging hikes and always wanted to test out the next level. There was a big mountain near where I lived, but the cost for a guided package to the top was thousands of dollars and the slots would sell out a year in advance. I travel a lot and was never able to commit to the climb in advance, and the high price was also a deterrent. I never really looked into other options because the mountain was so close. I got stuck on seeing that as the next step. As the years went by, a funny thing happened. I kept getting older. I certainly wasn't getting any younger. Climbing mountains is not something that will become easier or better with age. With my biological clock ticking, I finally started looking at alternatives and was pleased to find that there are other mountains out there besides the one I had become fixated on climbing. Even factoring in the cost of travel, I found many options outside of the United States that were much more affordable and did not need to be booked as far in advance. I decided to climb Mount Ararat, a 16,854-foot mountain in Turkey. If the mountain sounds familiar, it's because Noah crashed his ark there. I got my flights and booked the package, which including a couple nights in a hotel only cost $500 American. I wasted years wanting to do this and got stuck thinking it had to be done a certain way. This caused me to keep putting it off instead of just getting started. Once I removed the artificial constraints I had created, my goal became much more obtainable. Don't waste time thinking about something you want to do, just go do it. Lesson 2 is having the right equipment, but you might not even know what that is until you get started. Everyone knows it's important to have the right tools for the job, but how do you know what the right tools are? If it is a task that's easily repeatable, you can ask somebody who has done it, but as the number of variables and unknowns increase, it becomes harder to know what will truly help you accomplish your goal. We all operate under constraints. I could not bring an unlimited amount of equipment with me up the mountain, so I had to decide what was important and what was not. Other constraints are time and money. Often we don't know what the right tools we need will be until we get started. I did what I could to prepare for the climb, checked the equipment list, and purchase items I thought I would need. I still ended up missing items I needed or getting the wrong type of equipment. My sunglasses were not adequate for climbing. I needed a balaclava, and I did the entire climb without trekking poles, which would have helped me immensely. My clothes were not warm enough. It was unbelievably cold, and I ended up wearing 2 pairs of pants the entire time I was on the mountain. Some of the stuff I brought also became very hard to use in the extreme conditions. It becomes really difficult to put on sunscreen or open food when your fingers start to freeze and become inoperable soon after removing your gloves. Should I have been better prepared? Absolutely, but I figured out how to make what I brought work, and the next time I do a similar climb, I'll know exactly what I need. I could have spent weeks preparing or agonizing over what I needed and still brought the wrong stuff. It's good to prepare, but you might not even know what you need until you start. Lesson 3 is that even the best plans go to shit. It was still the winter season on the mountain. Normally there would be a second camp higher up that we could sleep at before summiting, but there was still too much snow and the horses that carried the tents and food could not make it up. So we had to use one camp at a lower altitude. This meant a longer, tougher climb on the day we planned to climb to the summit. The climbing company checked the weather and picked a day they thought was favorable to summit. We did an acclimatization climb the day before. The morning of the summit attempt, we woke up at 2 a.m. and left the camp at 3 a.m. After an hour or two of hiking, the winds had really picked up and tiny pieces of ice and snow were constantly hitting my face. As we continued to climb, the weather got worse. I figured we were going to find a place to break and see if the weather improved when the sun warmed things up, but we kept going. We reached the first of Mount Ararat's 2 peaks. You could only see about 20 feet in every direction, but we were close to the summit and pushed on. 45 minutes later, we were at the top. I was exhausted, but happy I had made it to the summit. I was looking forward to walking downhill instead of uphill for a change. We had lost one person from our group who became exhausted on the way up and had turned back, leaving me, one other climber, and our guide. The weather was getting worse. The visibility would alternate between being able to see 5 to 10 feet in front of you. We started to descend quickly. After about 30 minutes, our guide came to a stop. He would look around, walk off in one direction, and then double back, and was on his radio a lot. It slowly dawned on me that we were lost. We spent over an hour looking and could still not find the trail. My body was in pain, and having to walk back uphill after thinking we were done was excruciating. Eventually, we gave up trying to find the trail and just started trying to find a way down the mountain. But each route we would choose ended up dead-ending with a large drop we could not pass. I was both mentally and physically exhausted. On another uphill climb, I fell behind, and the guide and another climber quickly disappeared into the snow. It was terrifying. I pulled myself together, increased my pace, and started calling out to them. After what felt like an eternity, but was likely only 30 seconds to a minute, I could hear them shouting and was able to find them again. Our guide described some rocks we found to somebody at base camp over the radio, and he gave us a direction to go in, and eventually we found the trail again. We were lost for over 2 hours, and by the time we got back to our camp, nearly 11 hours had gone by since we left. Our guide later confided in us that even he was scared and not sure we would make it back. There's a saying that no plan survives first contact with the enemy. I prefer to shorten it and just say plans go to shit. Lesson 4 is that you need to change with the conditions. Back at the camp, the vision in my left eye was cloudy, I had frostbite on the back of my hands, and a terrible sunburn on my nose. We spent one more night on the mountain and hiked back to civilization the next day. Getting lost on the way down definitely dampened the excitement of summiting. I don't think the ends always justify the means. How you accomplish things matters. We should not have tried to summit that day. The decision was made by people off the mountain, checking a weather forecast that likely had no relevance to the conditions we faced. The guide should have turned back as the weather continued to deteriorate. I would much rather have tried again the next day or not have summited than have to worry about whether I would make it off the mountain. You need to change and adapt to new conditions, change your plan when it inevitably goes to shit. Lesson 5 is that one of the best ways to learn new things comes from talking to people. At higher altitudes, there's not much to do during downtime. I brought a book but could not concentrate on it. Your brain just does not work as well. One of the few things you can do is talk to other people. With books, the internet, and ChatGPT, it's easy to forget that for thousands of years, this was the only way information was exchanged between humans. I learned so much about Turkey, the Kurdish people, mountaineering, and the various countries people at the camp were from. You can learn a lot from talking to other people, and it's refreshing to learn about new things and places you might never have discovered otherwise. Some people watching this might think that I would have been better off paying more for a mountaineering company that would not have come close to killing me. That's a fair point, but despite the issues and near-death experience, I'm still glad that I saved myself thousands of dollars and finally got a taste of climbing a mountain. I wanted to do the climb because I was looking for adventure. In retrospect, I don't think summiting the mountain would have been enough for me. It was the 2 hours spent lost, wondering how long it would take to freeze to death, that made it a true adventure. Maybe that's something to unpack with a psychologist. This video is a bit different than my usual, but if you would like to see me climb an even bigger financial mountain, check out the video on my insane financial goals and take your ice pick and smash that subscribe button.